Are you a guy who's feeling lost in these menswear streets and wants to build a timeless wardrobe that turns heads? If you're not in agreement, then I want to link with you for a complimentary Step Up Your Menswear Discovery Call. In this informative 20-minute session, I'll dissect your current fashion choices and identify where you might be missing out on opportunities to enhance your style game, all while staying true to classic menswear principles. Whether you're a professional, a businessman, or simply someone seeking to upgrade your style game, the Step Up Your Menswear Discovery Call is tailor-made for you. Book a slot on my calendar today by going to I'mNotAGentleman.com and click on the Work With Me tab. Peace.
I'm Not a Gentleman is a production of ChaseandRider.com.
And I do understand that it's very easy to walk into a mall, try on some shoes, and buy them. As opposed to the shoes that I talk about on my channel or on this podcast is a lot harder to get. Well, I don't know if harder is the right term, but not as easy to get as obviously going to your local mall and picking out some shoes. But I don't think that should be your reason for going to the mall and buying your shoes from there because it's easy. Good things aren't usually easy to get, man. Yo, what up? Welcome to I'm Not a Gentleman, the show designed to help you look stylish without following trends. I'm your host, Vladimir Riché from ChaseandRider.com and your favorite menswear YouTuber's favorite menswear YouTuber. I've helped dozens of clients and hundreds of students and viewers feel more confident by looking their best and always making a great first impression. I've often been asked my opinion on brands like Magnani, To Boot New York, and those type of brands. And when I say those type of brands, I'm referring to the ones that are readily available at your local malls. Typically, you find those in the high-end stores like Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's, those types of stores. And ever since I started my YouTube channel back in January of 2019, started talking about shoes a lot on the channel, and those brands always pop up in my comments. And this is what we're going to talk about today because there's been a resurgence where people are commenting on a video that I had made almost 4 years ago now. And I mentioned it briefly in the intro of my latest YouTube video, so I wanted to talk about it on the podcast, go a little bit deeper into that subject. So this is what we're going to talk about today. Should you be buying your dress shoes from the mall? Intro.
Back in that bag again. Whoa.
So yeah, man, as I was saying, people know me on YouTube for making shoe content. Even though it's a menswear channel that covers all things menswear, but the majority of my videos are about shoes. And it's purposely done that way. At first, I just want to talk about everything, not just shoes, although I'm of the thought that shoes are the most important part when it comes to dressing well. But something funny happened when I started making shoe content. Like, my first video was not about shoes. It was called the 8 Menswear Hacks. Shoes was one of the hacks, but the entire video was just all things menswear, which is what I wanted the channel to be about. But my second video was an unboxing of a pair of shoes from Carmina. These double monk straps in dark brown suede. And people really know me for that type of content because I went on to do a bunch of unboxing and a lot of shoe videos. Those were the ones that were getting the most views. So to this date, the most popular video on my channel is the top 10 shoes under $300. And that one brought by itself over 4,000 subscribers to my channel. And I only have about 20,000 subscribers. So we're talking about 20% of the subscribers on the channel came from that video. Has over 190,000 views. And that's what people know me for. So I embrace it now. But one comment that I usually get ever since I started is, what's your thoughts on Magnani? Or what do you think about a brand like To Boot New York? But Magnani was the one that was popping up a lot. in my comments. And for a long time, I refrained from saying anything about them because I didn't really have anything nice to say. And being that people look at me as an authority in the men's shoes field, I feel like by not saying anything, people might take that as me probably co-signing them. And the way that I was going about it was, if I'm not talking about a certain brand, that means I don't like that brand. But the questions kept on coming. So eventually I did a Q&A video where one of the questions was, where do I rate Magnani on a scale of 1 to 10? And that created a firestorm in my comment section. And very recently, I don't know what's going on with the algorithm, but that video is popping back up in people's feeds. So I've been getting newer comments. Almost 4 years later, that video will be 4 years old, I believe in January or February coming up. And I'm still getting comments of people saying, well, I love my Magnani shoes and this and that, you know. And the funny part was I never told people not to wear Magnani shoes. I was just giving my rating on it. And the main reason for my rating is because I feel like they are overpriced. And we're talking about retail. Because some in the comments have told me they have gotten them for a lot cheaper than what they usually cost at a store like Nordstrom. But I can't go by that. So typically when I'm talking about prices of shoes, I'm talking about the retail price. So I understand some people can get them for a lot lower, but I was referring to the retail price, like if you were to walk into a store like Nordstrom. And typically when we're talking about a brand like Magnani, you're looking at close to $400 for them. So my thoughts were, that's way too much money for what you're getting back. So I still don't think that I said anything that was too controversial. The most controversial part was me rating them a 2 or 3. But if you were to actually listen to what I had to say about it, I don't think it was controversial at all. So this is what we're going to get a little bit deeper about in this episode. And if you haven't seen the video that I'm referring to, I will link it in the show notes. So why shouldn't you buy your shoes at your local mall? And I'm referring to us that live in the United States. The number one reason is because there are so many better options out there than what you'll find at your local mall. And I do understand that it's very easy to walk into a mall, try on some shoes, and buy them, as opposed to the shoes that I talk about on my channel or on this podcast is a lot harder to get. Well, I don't know if harder is the right term, but not as easy to get as obviously going into your local mall and picking out some shoes. But I don't think that should be your reason for going to the mall and buying your shoes from there because it's easy. Good things aren't usually easy to get, man. And one thing I realized, some of the pushback that I got is because, well, it's for a few reasons. The first reason is because Magnani, for example, is a brand that people are familiar with. So a lot of the brands that I be talking about, some of the comments be, I never heard of this brand before. And it's not an accident. Those brands are usually known by shoe enthusiasts. So unless you're really into shoes, I'm talking about welted shoes here, then you probably wouldn't know about these brands. So it's not unusual for people to say, I never heard of this brand whenever I bring up a certain brand. But once you see what it looks like, once you see the product, then it's very easy to see why I'm talking about it. So a brand like, once again, I'm going to refer to Magnani, but it's not just Magnani. There are other brands as well. Those are easy, and those are the names that people know. So I can understand why people are like, why is he talking about this brand? This is the brand that I love, you know? And the second part is, let's say your closet is full of Magnani shoes, and you're seeing this guy on YouTube, possibly for the first time, and he's rating them a 2 out of 10. That's not a good feeling. So I definitely get it. But number one, I was answering truthfully because that's how I really felt. And number two, I'm trying to help. So I may come off a little bit harsh at times, but my intention is to help. And once again, I refrain from talking about those type of shoes for a long, long time. But I felt like I was being complicit by not saying anything. So I answered the question the way that I felt. I think it's bad when people say certain things, but they can't back it up or they don't give you an alternative. If you look at my YouTube channel, there are a bunch of alternatives. That's, like I was saying, that's basically the main part of the channel is me talking about shoes. So I am giving people alternatives all the time, like the aforementioned top 10 shoes under $300. And I did another one of top 7 shoes between $300 and $500 or whatever. So there are a bunch of those examples. Now, besides them being overpriced, you buying the name, you're not really buying the quality. Typically, the leather quality leaves a lot to be desired. They look very plasticky. It's probably something you wouldn't notice unless you are familiar with other shoes that are better, like some of the ones that I speak about, like TLB Mallorca, Carmina, those type of shoes, right? But when you look at those shoes side by side, there's truly no comparison. But I guess a lot of people aren't looking at those shoes side by side because they don't even know about those shoes. So that's understandable as well. If you take the time to listen to what I'm saying, but it's not just me, there are other YouTubers that also speak about shoes and know what they're talking about. So if you listen to guys like that, then you very quickly see that we know what we're talking about. Now, I know, once again, it's personal. It's us telling you the shoes that you know and love aren't that great, especially for the price. But try to forget about that part for a second and look at what we're saying. Another thing is the construction of such shoes. So a lot of those shoes are Blake constructed. All the shoes that I've ever spoken about on my channel are Goodyear welted or hand welted, which are superior methods of construction. Now, that's not to say that a shoe like Magnani cannot be resold. They can, but it's just not as easy to resole them. And also, when you're talking about a Blake constructed shoe, it's easier for water to get into that shoe. Let's say you get caught up in a storm than if a shoe is Goodyear welted because of the way it's sewn. So with all those things into consideration, it's easy to see why I'm saying that those shoes are overpriced. So when you're talking about Magnani, for example, they retail around $395 or $390, $375, somewhere around there. And like I was saying, they're not Goodyear welted. The leather quality doesn't look great. And I'm speaking about shoes like TLB Mallorca that retails at $400 or $411 last time I checked. There's absolutely no comparison. And another thing when you look at those shoes, and that's one of the biggest things, is the last that they use. Now, if you're not familiar, the last is a piece of wood that gets inserted inside of the shoe as they're constructing the shoe that gives the shoe its shape. So the last is very important because when you're talking about the construction of the shoe, like Goodyear welted, hand welted, those things aren't seen by the naked eye. But when you're talking about the last of a shoe, that's the shape of the shoe. So you can absolutely see it. And those lasts aren't attractive. Now, of course, that's subjective, but it's something that you wouldn't notice if all you know are the shoes at the mall. But once you start looking at them side by side, there's really no comparison, man. I remember one of the homies that I'm cool with, he posted a picture one time, like he was holding something in his hand, and he took the picture showing what he was holding, and I could see his shoes, right, like in the background of what he was holding. His point wasn't to show the shoes, his point was to show what he was holding in his hand. And I look, I'm like, man, those shoes are unattractive. I couldn't really see those shoes like fully because the focus was on the whatever he was holding in his hand. So the shoes were kind of blurry, but I could make out the shape. And I was like, man, those shoes are not attractive because they were like so long and in your face, you know? And in his description, somebody asked, actually not in the description, but in his comment, somebody asked him, yo, what shoes are those? And he was like, oh, that's a pair of Magnani. And the person was like, yo, those shoes are fire, you know? My thing is, shoes should be attractive, obviously, right? But they shouldn't be in your face. So certain lasts really are in your face. That's not what you want. You want for the shoes to be beautiful without being in your face. You know, like the shapes should be subtle. The designs should be subtle. And that's one of the biggest issue I have with a brand like that. And once again, it's not just them. You know, I have similar issues with other brands as well. For example, To Boot New York, that's another brand where some of the last leave a lot to be desired. The leather quality also is not that great from what I can see. And you go to the mall, those shoes are over $400. And just to give you a quick story, I remember when I was getting married, or be like, you know, prior to the wedding, maybe like 2 years prior to the wedding, I would go to the mall and I knew I wanted to get a pair of plain black Capto Oxfords. And that's when I really first started to learn about quality shoes. Like I was in the very early stages. And I knew some of the shoes that I wanted, I couldn't get them in the States. Like I couldn't walk in somewhere and try them on. There were a few stores in New York City where I could have gone, but I just didn't really know about those stores yet back then. So every time I would go to the mall, I would go into the Ferragamo store and I would look at those plain black Capto Oxfords, and they were around $600. And I would try them on, but I would never buy them. And I remember my wife kept on saying, are you going to buy those shoes? Like every time you come here, you're looking at them, but you never buy them. And I was like, I'm not sure yet, you know? So now it's October, the wedding is in March, so I still have about 6 months or so, or 5 months or whatever, and I still don't have shoes yet. So I go back to the mall again, and I'm looking at those shoes again, and I'm like, man, that's a lot of money to spend on some shoes, $600. So I ended up not buying them. If you're from New York, you might be familiar with Woodbury Commons, which is an outlet where they have a ton of stores. So we ended up going to Woodbury Commons, and I believe Saks or Fifth is the store that I went to, and I got a pair of Magli, which is like a entry version of Bruno Magli. And that's how I got my plain Capto Oxford. It was less than $200. And I was looking at them and I'm like, man, those shoes are the same exact shoe as the ones from Ferragamo for a third of the price. And I was very happy with my purchase. Long story short, man, those shoes were horrible. Like the leather quality was the worst. You couldn't even really give the shoe a good polish because the polish couldn't penetrate the leather. Horrible.
We'll be right back.
Step into a world of sustainable elegance with Maddox & Co., where luxury meets consciousness. Since 2013, they've been crafting footwear that goes beyond style. It's a commitment to comfort and ethical responsibility. Born from the desire to honor their grandfather's legacy through fashion, Maddox & Co. is a journey across Spain, China, and Italy. They partner with local factories, ensuring ethical production and sourcing. Every pair of Maddox & Co. shoes is a masterpiece, meticulously handcrafted by dedicated artisans. From design to production, M&C takes pride in creating timeless pieces of art that embody quality and style. Their shoes are crafted in a variety of methods, including Goodyear welt, hand welt, Blake, and cement construction that is used only for their slippers. They use some of the best source materials from hand-sourced CF Stead and Tannery Danone, among others. But Maddox & Co. is more than just a brand. It's a community. A gathering of individuals who celebrate sophistication, quality, and generosity. Join M&C in events, collaborations, and exclusive opportunities that go beyond the product. A lifestyle that brings people together. Their commitment goes further. 1% for a better world. They believe success should be shared. That's why Maddox & Co. pledges to give back 1% of their total sales to causes that matter. Join them in making a positive impact on society and the environment. Become a part of their community, appreciating the finer things in life and making a difference with every step. Maddox & Co., where luxury, community, and purpose converge. Strive towards a world where style meets substance, where luxury aligns with compassion. Visit themaddoxbrand.com to check their styles and for more information. Peace. But at the same time, I only paid around $190 for them. In a sense, you get what you paid for, so I wasn't really too upset. I didn't pay that much. I would have been really upset, though, if I paid $400 or $600 in the case of Ferragamo and find out that those shoes weren't what I thought they were. So I'm happy I didn't get those shoes from Ferragamo because looking back now, I'm not a Ferragamo fan at all. With them, it's not the leather quality that's the issue. It's more like, to me, those shoes are not worth $600, man. Knowing what I know now, brands that sell their shoes for $600, we're talking about Yeosal, Act 10th. There are a ton of them. I'm just drawing a blank right now. Those shoes run circles around shoes like Ferragamo, in my opinion. But once again, this is what we know as Americans. Those are the shoes that we know. We go to the mall, those are the stores that we see. Those are the brands that we see. But if you only took your time to do some research, you'll find that those aren't the best options. So back to Magnani, if those shoes retail for under $200, I'd say, all right, go ahead. You know, if that's what you like, you can definitely get those. But at $400, no. And a brand like Ferragamo, if the shoes were like, let's say $200, then it makes sense to walk into a store like that, try on the shoes and walk out with them. But at $600 and above, I'm sure they probably have some that are a little bit less than that also. Those shoes aren't worth that price, in my opinion. And that's basically all that I was saying in that video that got so many people upset. If only they took the time to learn, they'll see that my opinion is not really special. I don't know any shoe enthusiast. And when I say shoe enthusiast, I'm talking about people that really know shoes. It's easy for anyone to go to the mall and blow their money on a bunch of shoes. Doesn't mean you're a shoe enthusiast. I don't know one shoe enthusiast who really wears those shoes. Not one. So I'm not saying anything that nobody's never said before. It's just that coming from me, I guess people don't like that. It's funny. And on the other end of the spectrum, man, this is funny as well. I just saw a video on Instagram. I reposted it over the weekend. And it was a dude that went to Walmart to buy shoes. And I guess he got some kind of partnership with Walmart. Well, I don't guess. In the comments, he said he has a partnership with Walmart. Although at the time he made the video, I don't know if the partnership was already present. But he goes to Walmart to buy shoes, and then he styled those shoes to show how they look, you know? And two other shoes were casual, which I thought were cool, and one of them was a pair of dress shoes, light brown dress shoes. He didn't say how much he paid for them, and I didn't look it up, but I'm thinking Walmart shoes. Well, they're not Walmart branded shoes, but I'm thinking shoes at Walmart, probably under $100. That's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong, though, but that's what I'm thinking. And those shoes were horrible. So you shouldn't get your shoes at Walmart either. And it's not even really the price, bro. I just made a video. Well, the video that I was referring to before, the top shoes under 300. I just redid that video because the last one was 4 years old. So people have been asking me to make an update. So I just did that and released it a couple weeks ago. And some of those shoes are around 150, man. We're talking about welted shoes here, Goodyear welted shoes. Great last. Well, good last, I should say. You know, good leather, good quality shoes, man. One of the brands that I started, actually the brand that actually started my journey into welted shoes, it was my first hand welted shoe actually, is Millman. And they also have Goodyear welted shoes, and their Goodyear welted shoes start under $200. And if you happen to live in New York, they have a store where you can actually walk in and try on the shoes. Now, I do understand that not everybody lives in New York, but they also have an online store. And it's very easy for them to ship to you, especially now that they are in the US. It's very easy for you to return the shoes if there's an issue or whatnot. Now, one negative about Millman is that the shoes do take a while to break in. But after a couple of weeks of wearing those shoes, you have some great shoes under $200. And I do understand 200 is not the same as 100, which is what I think that those shoes at Walmart cost. And I'm all about guys staying within their budgets. But you're really doing yourself a disservice. You might as well wait a little while and save more money and get you some Millman shoes under $200. And another brand is Blackbird, which is one of the brands that I spoke about. Their shoes start around $141, man. And they're calling those shoes hand welted. This is truly incredible. I mean, even if they were Goodyear welted for that price, that's incredible. So we're talking about only about $50 more than the ones at Walmart. And they have some really nice looking shoes, man, at that price. So I feel like we just have to put in a little bit more effort. And I know Walmart is not at the mall, but you get what I'm saying. So whether on the low end or on the high end, you shouldn't be getting shoes like that. You can do a lot better. And once again, I understand that people got upset or they took it the wrong way, but I do understand it could be personal because that's the brand they know, that's the brand they love, that's the brand they wear. But we can do a lot better than that. So if you have any question though, you can definitely reach out to me. My email is vr@chaseandrouter.com. You can also find it in the show notes. If you want to find out more about shoes, if you want to work with me one-on-one, I can definitely help you. But I have a ton of free resources, free videos about shoes on my YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and type Vladimir Riché and I'll definitely come up. Or once again, my channel is also linked in the show notes. So that's basically what I was saying, man. Those shoes that you see at the mall, they are either overpriced, not great quality, or flat out not attractive. You can do a lot better. So this is the part of the show where I take your questions and answer them live on the podcast. Well, not live, but you know what I mean. And if you want to participate, all you have to do is go to my website, which is I'mNotAGentleman.com. You see a microphone on the bottom right corner. Click on there, leave your name and where you're calling from, and ask your questions for a chance to be featured on the podcast, possibly. This question comes from Joe. Let's listen.
Yo, what's up, Vlad? This is Joe from down in Florida. Just a quick question. Wondering where you would recommend buying a couple more affordable pocket squares. I got a few that people have gifted me that are just not up to par. And I'm wondering where you would recommend me dipping my toes into into that pocket square game?
That's a good question, man, because people ask me a lot about my pocket squares. I get a ton of questions about them because I'm really into them. And your pocket square is pretty much right there, so it's hard for you to miss it. And my pocket square is one of the ways that I get colors in my outfit. So they're definitely noticeable. When I started with pocket squares, I used to only wear white pocket squares. I think I might have mentioned that on the channel before. Any pictures of me from when I started wearing suits was always white pocket squares because even though I liked the way that the colorful pocket squares looked, I just didn't know how to pair them with my tie. So instead of doing it wrong, I figured I'm just going to wear white pocket squares, man. It's easy. It goes with every tie, every suit. And that's what I did. And eventually, I started to learn more about colorful pocket squares and how to pair them with your ties. And I haven't looked back since. I still wear white pocket squares. So, for example, if I'm attending a wedding or something like that, it's going to be a white pocket squares because I don't want no attention at all to be on me. And also, a lot of times, if I'm wearing a solid tie, I'd probably reach for a white pocket square, but 90% of the time, probably higher, I'm wearing a colorful pocket square. So I think that's what Joe is referring to. And he did mention affordable, and affordable is subjective. So he didn't really give me a price. But one thing that I found is pocket squares are pretty expensive. And by expensive, I'd say around $60 and higher. One brand that I wear probably 75% of the time is Drake's. I've mentioned Drake so many times on this podcast. I'm a huge fan of what they have as far as their accessories, especially their scarves and also their pocket squares. But their pocket squares retail typically around $75 to $80, sometimes $90. And one thing that I found this year, because a lot of my clients, when I'm putting their list together for them, I can't find any Drake's pocket squares. I'm talking about the colorful ones this year. So typically fall and winter or spring and summer, they are released different pocket squares. Wool and silk combination for the fall and winter, and sometimes it's like cotton for the spring and summer. And they don't have any this year. I don't know if they stopped making them. I don't know exactly what happened. But once again, those are pretty expensive anyway to begin with, talking about $75 to about $90. But they don't have any of those. Another company that I wear, if I'm not wearing Drake's, I wear a lot of Shibumi pocket squares as well. And I think they'll do a really, really good job. And that's who I would recommend. Their pocket squares are around $60. I just checked. Like $58, I believe it was, to be exact. And I also have a 10% code with Shibumi. I know it's not a lot, but it's something. So if you enter the code VLAD, VLAD, and the number 10, you get 10% off. So VLAD10 to get 10% off at Shibumi. I'll enter a link in the show notes so you can go directly to them. Now, pocket squares, what to look out for is, number one, the size. So if they have two options, you're going to want the bigger ones. So in Shibumi's case, they are 16 inches by 16 inches, which is what you want. And the second thing that you also want to be looking out for is the material. So the ones that I wear in the fall and winter, they are 70% wool and 30% silk. Sometimes you may find some that are all silk, 100%. I don't love those because I feel like they are too flimsy and they are easier to slide into your pocket to where they're not visible anymore. So 70% wool, 30% silk is what you should be looking for. And then the size, once again, is 16 inches by 16 inches is ideal. Because the bigger the pocket square, the more folds that you can create with them. And another brand that makes some really nice pocket squares is Kent Wing. And one thing about them, when you go to the website, you're going to notice that they have two sizes, 13 inches and 17 inches. So you definitely want to opt for the 17 inches option. And those are $65. And Another option that you're going to find with some of the pocket squares is going to ask you to select the fabric. So there are two options, 100% silk and 70% wool. And the 70% wool is going to be $20 extra. So we're talking about $85 for that option. So, I mean, that's a little bit expensive, but the pocket squares are really, really nice. So that is another brand that I would recommend, but you did mention affordable, so I think that Shibumi will be your best bet. So thanks for checking out episode 20 of the podcast. I can't believe we're up to episode 20 already. It's crazy, man. Before I started doing the podcast, I was doing some research, and it says the average podcast lasts 7 episodes. So my goal was to record 7 episodes before I even drop the first episode. So that way I know for a fact mine is going to last a lot more than 7. Now, we are still in the early stages, and of course I didn't record the 7 episodes in advance like I thought I was going to. I just do it weekly. But I can't believe we are at episode 20. So thank you to all of you who have been tuning in every week. I really appreciate the support, and make sure that you are sharing it with somebody that you care about, who's trying to get their menswear game up. So once again, I appreciate you checking out this one. It's about why you shouldn't be buying your shoes at the mall. And tune in again next week for another fire episode of I'm Not a Gentleman. Peace.